Hey, welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name's Elliott and you're watching Rickety Ski Reviews. Today we're talking about the Stockli Stormrider 88. Now, full disclosure, I paid for this demo myself. I was given a discount by Greenwood, so big shout out to Greenwood's out in Boise. But as always, I'm not paid by this company or any other company, and I completely paid out of pocket. So if you like this kind of independent review and this helped you make a decision on your purchase, please consider using the affiliate links down below. That's what helps keep me independent with these reviews. I skied this ski in a 184 centimeter length, which means that it had a 20.6 turn radius. As the name suggests, it has an 88 millimeter width underfoot. These skis, as with all Stocklis, kind of have that signature layering with, it's basically like rubber dust with sheets of Titanol. These skis retail for $1,249, but right now you can typically find them for somewhere south of $1,000, with it being the end of the year. Now first, let's talk first impressions, and then we'll kind of dive into the nitty gritty, the good, the downsides. With any ski, there's pluses and minuses and sacrifices it makes for those pluses. Now, my first impression with this ski, with most Stockli skis, is always positive. I think a lot of people, when they think of Stocklis, they think of the signature dampness, which is kind of a very distinct feature. But the other thing that kind of doesn't get talked about as much is how smooth not only the bases are with dampness, but also how smooth the dampness is on the edges, like how clean the ski feels on edge without getting a bunch of rattling. Like every turn just carves through in a very smooth manner. Some skis, it'll kind of like build up pressure and hook up and then release on the tails, or it kind of takes a while to initiate and then it hooks up on the back part of the ski. I feel like Stockli has just totally mastered how smooth the ski feels into the transition of the turn and how smooth it feels throughout the apex of the turn. It's very distinct to Stockli, and it's always kind of the first thing I notice when I'm on a pair of these skis. The other thing I noticed, and I've spent so much time on the Montero AR, which I love, which is probably the best carving ski I've been on all year. I have a full review about that. But I really can't help but compare the Stormrider 88 to the Montero AR because they're both from Stockli and they're both kind of not far off as far as width goes. And I feel like this is a much more accessible version of a Stockli carving ski, but it lacks some of the pinpoint precision that the Montero has, and that's fine. Like, it doesn't have to be the Montero. That's why the Montero exists. But it is very interesting to see some of the differences that make them distinct. Now first, let's talk about the good, and then we'll talk about some of the drawbacks, because like I said, every ski has drawbacks, and this ski is no exception. But, you know, to be honest, most of my negatives are pretty granular. On the whole, I really enjoyed these skis, and I can see why they're so popular. So for the good, these are much more forgiving than the Montero AR. The Montero AR is like, you really have to pay attention to your timing, being ready for the turn to come. You can't kind of sit and wait and get lazy with your turns. And I feel like if you're somebody who doesn't want to be that on all the time, the Stormrider is a really great option because it is so much more forgiving. You can just kind of place your timing and your turn initiation in different parts of the ski, and it just has a lot more turn flexibility as far as like what your timing looks like for pressure, when you kind of build it. If you want to sit on your tails a little bit longer, you can do that. Whereas the Montero has like hands down some of the best performance of any all mountain ski I've been on. But this is like giving you most of that performance with a lot more ease of use and accessibility to most skiers. You know, and just like flexibility of when you apply the maximum amount of pressure on the apex of the turn. This ski also is more flexible, and it allows you to turn from the hips. It allows you to relax from the tails. It allows you, if you want to give it some bite just below the tips, you can do that, which is nice. I think this is more accessible because there's a lot of different styles of skiers, or what feels good to different skiers on when they initiate the turn. I've always said that with like Vocal. Vocal is very kind of under the middle of the ski, whereas Nordica is a little bit more in the tails. Atomic is a little bit more in the tips. When you have a ski like the Stormrider that gives you a little bit more like, okay, you can kind of do it any of these three, that's a nice feature for a lot of skiers. The Stockli dampness isn't just for chatter on bases. I talked about that, how it's like you get that smooth feeling on the edges and on the bases. I've always said for people who are looking for a really damp ski, there's a few skis that do it really well. You've got Volkel, who I think does a tremendous job with their skis dampness, especially with the Mantra line, either the M7 Mantra or the Mantra 88 or the old Kendo. Nordica does a really good job with it, especially if you have that specific ski style. But I gotta say, Stockli kind of has mastered that. These skis are more expensive, but if you're looking for the dampest ski, I would say that Stockli has mastered dampness not only in the bases, I'd say it's on par with Nordica and Volkel, but as far as like edge smoothest, there's no ski out there doing it like Stockli when you're just looking for a really smooth, even ride. In my past reviews, I've talked about how it kind of feels like going from a Toyota to a Lexus, where, you know, you go from a Toyota Corolla to a Lexus IS. It's the same reliable vehicle, but just a smoother version. Going from my Atomic Mavericks to a Stockli Stormrider, or going from a Volkel Mantra to a Stockli Stormrider, feels like that change, where it's pretty much giving you most of the same performance, but a lot more smoothness, a lot more not feeling the hard chatter on your legs, or not getting a lot of that negative feedback on your feet. It just makes a very smooth turn all the way through, especially if you care about carving. This is kind of like the luxury vehicle equivalent for skis. It's not like it's going to go any faster than the Atomic, but it's just going to give you a smooth ride the whole way through. So if that doesn't matter to you, maybe it's not worth the additional money. But if you're somebody who's getting high mileage, who doesn't want to feel the chatter, who just wants to feel that smooth on-edge turn, and you get a lot of mileage, it may be worth it to you. What else did I say? Oh yeah, the washed out turns in soft snow were like surprisingly fun. Those are also smooth. If you have to wash it out and you can't like complete the turn, if it's a weird shaped run or if you have the general public in your way, they've managed, especially with this iteration. In my older Stockli Stormrider 88s, I owned a pair of these about 5-6 years ago at the 2018s. And they really struggled with that, where like they just didn't have as much turn flexibility. And I feel like these ones really have improved in that sense of like, I feel like I can wash out my turns. Now, maybe they haven't changed them that much, and I don't think they've changed too much, but I did feel like the washed out turns just felt a little bit better. You know, maybe it was just that my old pair were so beat up, who knows, but I was pleasantly surprised, and I didn't remember the skis skiing that well in the soft snow. So for those little kind of like hop turns when the snow gets kind of granular or corny, I had a blast on these, and I was not expecting it from a Stormrider. But now that we talked about the good, let's talk about some of the drawbacks, because this ski is no exception to them. And when you're spending this much money, you want to know about the drawbacks. At least I would want to know. Cons. I wouldn't mind if the ski let me just round my turns off a little bit more. That could just be me being overly aggressive or trying to push the ski to its limits. But honestly, when I think about that in the bigger picture, that's probably what the Montero's for. This is a little bit more cruisy and kind of be patient with your turns, and I can appreciate that, but just so you have some context for where it sits compared to some of the other skis. The tips don't initiate the turns very aggressively. Like, they can feel a little bit aloof in and out of the turn, which you can fix by being patient and just kind of building up pressure in the front of your boots and then building up pressure into the skis. But you should know that this is not like a Montero AR where you're just kind of going turn to turn as aggressive as you can. This is a ski that really wants the pressure built up and to make nice open radius turns. Like I said, can make those washed out turns and do a good job of that as well, but it's just not like as aggressive as the Montero line is. This is a little bit more cruisy, open turn finessing, which is fine. I mean, it's very similar to a lot of other skis out there in that way, but I could see somebody going for like, I want this turn as quickly as possible, maybe saying, I'd rather spend my money on the Montero rather than the Stormrider. I like it, and I feel like a lot of people will get used to it, but you know, if you're gonna spend this much money, you should know what it kind of lacks compared to some of the other stuff out there. You know, like once you do get that turn initiated and get those edges up, it still has that signature Stockli dampness, but you know, it takes its time kind of getting there more than some of the other skis. Oh, what else? Oh yeah, I said I could be crazy, but I feel like they do have a slightly lower top speed from the older versions. I think that the springier turns compared to the previous generation that I owned is totally worth it. They feel lighter, they feel springier. It feels like you get more energy out of the turn compared to like what you put into it versus the older version I owned from 2018. But the trade-off there is I did notice just a little bit of a lower top speed at like low Super G, high GS speeds. Now most people, they won't care about that and they won't even notice it, but just an observation I made where I'm like, oh, it's just not as like down the hill, straightaway tracking as there was with the previous generation. It's pretty mild, but worth noting. And the last con may not even be a con for a lot of people because the older version of the Stormrider I feel like was fantastic. Back when I did my first written reviews, it was like the Atomic Vantage and the Stockli Stormrider were my skis of the year back in like what, 2015, 2016? And I will say that I've noticed that the platform for the Stormrider 88 hasn't changed that much since my 2018 skis. Just to be totally honest with you, and I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's a very good platform and it's a very popular ski. And in my mind, it's like kind of the first ski that I feel like made Stockli a really accessible ski for a lot of people. I do feel like the things I loved about the original platform are still there. But there's a few tweaks, like the wood is a little bit more pliable, a little bit more springy, and I think for people who like to make the most out of moderate terrain, this is a really nice change because it allows you to get more energy out of your turns and kind of stack and build momentum as you're skiing. So it's a very similar platform. That could be a plus or minus depending on how you want to look at it, that the platform hasn't changed a ton over the years. It seems like they've just kind of refined it down and made it a little bit springier. But if the Stormrider didn't fit for you in previous generations, I would say the majority of the DNA is still there. So maybe look at one of the other options. So what would I give this ski for a score? You know what, honestly, this ski reminds me a lot of the DPS Kaizen 105, where it's kind of in this weird spot. Let me explain. DPS and Stockli are both very expensive skis. I think that the price is justified because as far as I'm concerned, DPS makes the best powder ski I've ever skied on. It is so ergonomic. It feels so good in the trees. They do a great job with the Kaizen one. What was it, the 112 or 113 I skied? I was blown away by that. And same for the Stockli Montero AR. That is the best carving experience I have ever had in my lifetime. It is just phenomenal. Everything like kind of lines up with the smoothness and the ability to kind of stack energy. And then you look at the DPS Kaizen 105 where it's meant to be kind of a carving ski, and as soon as that carving ski gets onto adverse conditions, it doesn't do as well. The Stockli Stormrider is kind of, in a way, a parallel on the other end of the spectrum. I think this is a phenomenal carving ski. It's very smooth, it's very forgiving and accessible to a lot of people, but if you're an avid carver and you just want the top end performance for carving, I would probably direct you more towards the Montero because I just feel like it's a more dialed in experience. It's not a bad ski by any means, but it's not giving you the best of what Stockli does well, if that makes any sense. I know I'm kind of speaking in a weird way. But that all being said, I do feel like if you're somebody who wants to experience the Stockli dampness and needs an accessible ski that doesn't have to be timed perfectly, this is a really good introduction to the Stockli signature dampness and the signature dampness on the edges and on the bases. So it's like a very accessible, easy to recommend ski. But I think that if you're an expert and you're really dialed in with your carving and you want the best of the best, go with the Montero AR. But if you're still kind of working on your carving and you need a ski that's more forgiving, this ski does a good job of making that Stockli dampness and what people love about Stockli's really accessible to a wide audience of people that don't have to get the timing right to experience that. So I do think it's a great ski that serves a lot of people, but when you look at like the off-trail performance, it's not nearly as versatile as a lot of other skis with a similar width. When I took the Stockli Stormrider off-trail, it just does not have that range that a Volcal M7 Mantra or even in good conditions that Atomic Maverick or Salomon QST has. Now, it's carving way better than most of those skis and it's way smoother and more damp than those other skis. But if you're looking for an off-trail ski, I wouldn't go into it expecting the Stormrider to scratch that itch for you. It'll get you by, it'll let you survive through that stuff, but it's not nearly as fun off-trail. Like I said, on-trail, the carving is peak, it's so good, and if you're looking for an accessible Stockli and you don't want to totally get your timing down to enjoy it, this is a great option. I'm not trying to steer you away from it, but I think if you've got your carving dialed in and you're looking for Stockli's top-end performer, I would redirect you towards the Montero line and you know, just take the ski for what it is. Don't expect it to outperform Montero. Don't expect it to outperform a QST 92 on the off trail. Know that like, hey, this is a carving ski that's not going to force me to have perfect timing all the time. That's going to be smooth and feel really good. And I think if you take it for what it is, it's going to give you great performance. But I don't know, like, I'm not paid by anyone. I don't care if you buy the skis or don't buy the skis. I'm just here to give you my honest opinion. And for those people who want to experience Stockli without having to perfect everything, I think you're gonna really like this. The price is more accessible than the Montero, at least at like current prices. I think it's a pretty good value. I mean, with it on sale, it's even with a full price Black Crows. And I owned a pair of these, and for a couple years, this was such a nice option when I only had one pair of skis. So for me, I think this is a solid 8.6. It's not the pinnacle of Stockli performance, but it is such a fun ski and such a forgiving ski. And as always, like I say with most Stockli skis, such a smooth ride. So I think if you kind of go into this knowing what you're getting out of it, you'll have a ton of fun, and I would highly recommend these. But be realistic about what you're going to use it for. You know, and I think everybody's like, well, I'm a top-end skier, I need a Montero. There's a ton of people where they would probably have a lot more fun on the Stormrider and be able to figure out what part of the turn they actually like. So I think it's a great ski. It's always difficult with these more expensive skis because, you know, I always get comments like, well, this is so expensive and that should play a role. And it is expensive, but I also had a pair of Stormrider 88s that I bought used that were in such better condition than most other used skis from that year, and they held up while I had them. So I don't know, I think that you're getting a high quality ski, you're getting a smooth performance, but don't get it thinking it's gonna be a do-it-all, you know, off-trail powder day ski. This is a smooth, approachable, fun all-mountain ski with more range than a Montero. So anyway, that's the end of the video. Like I said before, you can find those links down below in the description. If you use those affiliate codes, that's what helps keep me independent. Big shout out to Stockli for sending me those Monteros. And like I said, I went out and took the initiative and demoed these Stormrider 88s by myself, but I still appreciate Stockli sending the Monteros so I knew how to compare them. And I really enjoyed working with them on that. This was just kind of a labor of love for me and being like, oh, there's a pair of Stormrider 88s I can demo. It's been a long time since I skied on a pair of those, and I know a lot of people want to know about them. We have channel memberships where I will kind of prioritize your questions. That's a way of directly supporting the channel. You can also, as always, like and subscribe, but more than anything, just thanks for taking time out of your day to watch my videos. It means a ton to me that you guys take time to just sit down, watch my videos, and I cannot tell you how amazing it is to me that you guys care about what I have to say, and I don't know, I can't say thank you enough. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. See ya.
On